morning, everyone. We love you so much, and we're glad to be meeting with you here again today. Come in and get your weekly smudging, is what I'm trying to say. Smudge for all of us and clearing it all away, and bringing our highest selves in for this amazing conversation that we're having. And believe me, I'm taking notes for this one too. I got my little index cards here. We have an amazing guest, but first I want to thank Rhonda for all you do getting the show together. Rhonda's an amazing teacher and Reiki master and taught me all I need to know about Reiki. And her guest today is the wonderful and amazing Michelle Freed. Now, when I read your bio, it's like all these places of learning. You've taken your education on your subject. I want to say you're an expert now. You're at the past expert level. So we'd like to welcome you, Michelle, and we want to find out exactly what you do.
Thank you. I'm going to put you on big, Michelle. Yeah, it was great to hear Michelle on my favorite podcast, one of my favorite podcasts with Jim Perry. And when I listened to you, I was so fascinated with your remote viewing and just like all the things you do. So can you tell us just like a little bit about yourself and everything that you do and all your certifications? It's awesome.
Yeah. So, I guess I'm a person that like go big or go home kind of person. So, I just, I'm like a sponge and I want to learn from everyone. And my philosophy is that you just learn bits and pieces from everybody, and then you kind of make it your own. So, and I also feel like anytime you go to a lecture or a class, even if you take home one thing, then that was successful. Just one piece of information.
Yeah, like anytime you go.
And so I started out taking classes on psychic development with my best friend from, high school.
My best friends always get us into this, don't they?
And so I took those classes. She kind of sort of forced me. And at the time I'm like, oh, you have to be special for, you have to be born psychic, and I don't know. And she's like, no, just take the class. And so this was my first experience. I pretty much led a straight life. I didn't really kind of focus on other things. I was being a mom and just kind of focused on things. And I, over time, realized that I was teaching my kids these ideas and not really knowing that I was doing that. There were just kind of things coming out of me that, like how I would give them advice, or even if I punished them, I would go tell them to go meditate. And I wasn't even like a meditator or anything. I just it was kind of my words for saying, go calm down. I just went, go meditate. So I had these cute little 2 and 3 year olds, sitting on the floor with their hands like this, meditating, and it all looked cute to everyone, but I didn't really realize what I was, saying to them and what was really happening. And then over time, when I started taking the psychic development class, it kind of opened up the knowledge, I guess, this channel of knowledge. And so I just wanted to keep taking classes. So I became a hypnotherapist because I felt like living in Chicago, where I live, a lot of people are not open to, like, oh, I'm a psychic, or I'm an intuitive, or I'm going to read the Akashic records. I didn't feel like people here were kind of open, and I wanted to make this my career. So I felt like hypnosis was, the blend of both. It was a blend of, straight psychology and then also the spiritual end of it, because it's just limitless what you can do with it. And the fact that hypnosis works so quickly, where if you go to a regular therapist, it's kind of like you go there for many, many years. You're talking about the same thing in circle. This was my experience anyway. bringing up all that stuff, but then not doing anything with it. And I feel like hypnosis is connecting the mind and the body and everything. So that is a really big, important part of hypnosis for me. But my challenge was that I would not have problems getting clients, but I had problems keeping clients. The reason is because by the second session, we usually could clear things up in 3 sessions, depending on how open they are. And on the second one, they're emoting, they have the tears, they're really getting that work done. And then I'm like going, okay, so when are we scheduling the next session? And they're like, you know what? I left my calendar at home, and I called you.
So I'm like, scary to do the work, right? It's scary to do the work.
Yeah. And so I realized that you can't force people; they have to be ready. And so now I kind of backed away a little bit from hypnosis in terms of therapeutic reasons, and I'll always ask them, are you willing to do anything, anything and everything, to get rid of the fear or whatever their issue was. So that's, until I feel like they're ready in that state, and I completely, won't really take them on as a client. But we do past life regressions, and we have done some age regressions. And I've had several people come to me that feel like they were abducted and they want to recall what happened. So we have done that. And then as I was going through all these classes, I found remote viewing. And this felt, because I feel very much like a skeptical believer, and I love science. I am so drawn to science and anything to do with it. And so I kind of gravitated to the military remote viewing, which means that this was created, a protocol, a methodology that was created by our government, people in our government. So they have actually a training course, and they taught a bunch of, like a group of people. They called it the Stargate, Project Stargate, and it was declassified in the 90s. So once they declassified it, all these people that were participating kind of came up with their version of it and started training people. And I was one of the people, and I loved it. I felt like I had data, I had evidence, I could actually engage my mind, body, and spirit. You sit down with pen and paper, that's what it looks like. You're sketching things, you're using all parts of your body and your mind and everything. And it was all the check boxes of what I wanted to do. So I was excited to get to work on a lot of projects, some that I can't talk about and some that I can. And I like to use these things for a purpose. And so one of the things about finding missing people was very meaningful to me, is to help on those projects and things like that. And then I went through a divorce. I'm still on my bio. Sorry, guys.
No. It's fascinating. It's like, like these are all, this is like a lot of people follow these kind of pathways, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so then what happened was I had to find work. And so when I met all these people in the worlds that I was educating, a lot of them had books, and my background's in marketing. And so I just helped them get on radio shows and podcasts and things like that. And like I said at the beginning, go big or go home. I was reaching out to Art Bell. And in fact, I think I put that in the subject, go big or go home. And I started pitching. I love pitches. So I wrote a pitch, and one thing led to another, and the host called me up, and she said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry it took so long to get back to you. We lost our producer. And then I just kind of took advantage of the moment, and I just went, oh, hire me. And she was flabbergasted, like, oh my gosh, okay, let's test you out. And I booked 2 weeks worth of shows in 2 days, and Art told her, you better hire her right now. And so I got my start on that show, which led me to meeting so many amazing, fascinating, interesting people. And I feel like I can have my PhD in everything weird, because
is there a PhD in that? Because I think we're right up there. Like, yeah, I think we're at least at our master's, maybe not right on our doctorate.
I agree. We should be called Doctor of Weird, High Strangeness or something. Yeah.
Sure. I always say, let's put the normal back into paranormal.
Oh, that's cute. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. So that kind of led me, and over the years, I like to teach. In fact, I don't like to teach. I love to teach. It's just my passion, and I'm obsessed with remote viewing, because to me, it's like Zen. It's learning to let go of what you think is, what you think you are, or the world is, and letting that go and opening up to, the truth, the reality of everything. So there's incredible personal lessons that I've learned from remote viewing that I apply in my everyday life. So I'm just, and that's where we are now, I think.
So there's Kirith from South Africa. Hi, Kirith. How are you doing? We'd love to remote view where you live, because it's awesome. So can you tell us, sort of go through, like, I know you have your own type of remote viewing that you teach, but what would the military look like? Just like their protocol, like what's they pick a coordinate or something, or they just give it a number?
Right. So mine is very similar to that. The difference is that the one from the military is called controlled remote viewing, and it's very in the style of military. Even the terms they use are, very military type terms and things like that. And in the 90s, there was a team that came out with more of a civilian. It's very similar, but has some differences. And what it looks like is you're given, they used to call it a coordinate. I think Teresa said that, where now we just say a target number, or, and it's just a random number. In fact, we can use an online random number generator to get a number. So the number isn't really what's significant. What's significant is the tasking or the question. And this is where the science kind of comes in. The question is not known to the viewer. So you can have, like, say we're looking for a missing person. The secret question would be sketch and describe the current condition of so-and-so, or sketch and describe the current location of so-and-so. So they'll probably know they're working on a missing person, but they don't know what we're specifically asking. So then there's you kind of go through different phases through the process, and that is what we see.
Can I ask a quick question? What is the point of the number? Is it so we don't start, if we said we're looking for somebody, people would start making assumptions? Is that why?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, about the assumptions, and I'll go into that in 1 second. The number is really, I've done a lot of remote viewing where someone said, just do the target, and they didn't even give me a number. So the number is, it could be used as kind of lining up in kind of an organized way of keeping this structured. So like if I say go to the target, it's really all about intention, so because, and then I'll get into the, where you say drawing conclusions. And I think before we went on the air, Teresa, I know she left now, but she mentioned something that was really interesting about how she felt that she dabbled in remote viewing, and she felt that it was really hard for her. It wasn't, as easy as just picking something out of the Akashic records. And so to answer that, which I think is really, really important, and something I've learned through the education of hypnosis and the science I love and everything, is if you imagine that your brain is actually separated into 3 parts instead of 2. So normal streamlined science says you have your conscious and your unconscious. When I was taking my class, they divided the unconscious into 2. One is your subconscious and one is your unconscious. The unconscious is responsible for anything automatic in your body, your breathing, your heart, anything. And the subconscious is kind of connected. It doesn't know language. It doesn't know words. It just is metaphors and symbols and analogies and emotions, which is really important. So, for example, a really good example, and I use this all the time. If I asked you to recall the last time that you felt sorry, and everyone that's listening can also do this too. Just think about the last time you felt sorry, and I'd like you to describe what sorry feels like. So how would you describe what sorry feels like?
It sort of feels, it's uncomfortable in my body. It makes me feel, I don't know, like shameful or something like that. I don't feel good.
Yeah. So that's exactly, like people say they feel shame, they feel minimal, whatever. And when I ask, a lot of times they kind of hunch over. So their body's reacting to their emotion. And this is a really good example of how your feelings and emotions are connected to your body. So those two kind of relate. So say we took out the word sorry and we replaced it with the word apologize. Do you feel a difference?
Yeah, apologizing is a more empowering word. It helps. It's an action word, so it helps make amends. So,
right.
Yeah.
So then the next question is, you get to choose. Do you want to feel sorry, or do you want to feel what you get from apologize? So you're really getting the same message across to someone. Oh, I apologize. But how your body is responding to that is important. If you're walking around like, hunched over, no wonder why we need, gift certificates for massages all the time, right? Or if we're walking around in fear or anything like that. So to bring to my point, Joe McMoneagle, who's one of the top remote viewers out of the military from the Stargate program, he said to me, if you want to be a world-class remote viewer, you need to give up what it is to be human. And I was just like, what the heck is he talking about? And then he went further and he said, as humans, we want everything. We look for patterns and we want everything to make sense. So that also applies when we're doing anything psychic or anything like that, is that we get downloads of information and we're drawing conclusions a lot of the times. For example, another example I always use is if I said to you, I'm perceiving something that's red, shiny, and round. My pattern, my brain, my left brain, my conscious says red, shiny, round. Oh, it's an apple. But what if we're working on a target and it's the truck that's near the person that is missing? And that's a very important fact. So we have to be careful when we're using our subconscious or psychic or intuition to just make sure that we're not drawing conclusions. And so even pulling from the Akashic records or doing a reading on somebody, we just always have to be careful that we're not drawing a conclusion to something or assuming something. So we have to kind of stay in this because we're human and that's what we do. And so the reason why it can be perceived as a little bit more energy in remote viewing is because we are learning to cope with the fact that we're human. We're learning to cope with that left brain and right brain and teaching them how to work together. And this is the answer I give to people that come to me and say, if you're so psychic, why don't you win the lottery? Well, that's why. It's because this isn't foolproof yet. I have every belief in my morsel of my body that we will get to this. But if we're not aware and we aren't working on it, then it's not going to happen. But remote viewing is a perfect place to work on it because it's built that way. We actually have a name for it. We call it an AOL, which means analytical overlay. And that's when we're in a session and we name something, like we say apple, and like I always say, like, you don't want to be describing a fruit basket when you're looking for a truck near, somebody that's missing. So, so that's
the assumptions just keep rolling from the apple, right? And you go, oh, yeah. And
so if it's an apple, then
you start screening out anything else, right?
Yes. And that's like, also when we do readings on people, also, I've fallen into it when I do hypnosis, and my teacher always said to me, nothing, don't assume anything, like even the fact that one time I was hypnotizing my mom and I thought, oh, what a great, I'll just say, now you open the gates and you're in the warm sun and you're by the ocean and it feels so warm and cozy. And she said to me afterwards, she goes, Michelle, I don't like water and I don't like the sun. For me, what would be warm and cozy is a rainy day, cloudy, whatever. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. So again, I was presuming that would make her feel good. So it's just a trap that we get in, and we just have to learn to cope with it.
And I guess Nancy was saying I was kind of reprimanded for unconsciously remote viewing in my relationships. It wasn't a conscious choice. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, a lot of people. Well, that's the thing in the structure of the kind of remote viewing that I teach. It's a controlled environment. So it's like you're getting trained to turn your, say we're all antennas. So you're getting trained to dial down your powers, your superpowers or whatever. So that way you can learn to, turn it on when you want or not. There are a lot of people out there that walk through life and they're so sensitive and they don't ask for it. And they're getting all this information just running at them. The remote viewing is kind of like holding up a structure for these people or anybody. And it says, okay, now is a time that I'm remote viewing. Now is the time that I'm being psychic. And then there's, and we actually end the session. We break away at the end. We have something that we do to break away from the session. So it's kind of like all thought about, all put together, everything we can imagine, and we're still trying to evolve it. And we, I like to engage our body into the session. So I like when people start perceiving, say we're looking at, I don't know, the Eiffel Tower. I want people, to start raising their hands and feeling things, and things like that. So, I want your butt out of the seat, and start perceiving things around you.
And that's just like kind of opening up your imagination, right? That's really all our superpowers if we let it, because imagination doesn't come from just nowhere. That's what I always say. It's energy that's kind of funneled to us a lot of times.
Yeah. A lot of people say, oh, I feel like I'm making this up. And I'm like, well, it could feel like that, but it's coming from somewhere, and we do a cool down before we start our session, which opens up the third eye. And we set that intention that we're going to turn down our logic and turn up our right brain And so we set that tone where, okay, this is a time, let the floodgates open and bring in all the information. And because this information kind of flows in, we have an actual structure on paper where you kind of pass through these phases in your session. And then you also have data or data, depending on how you say that. I'm a nerd. But you have, and sometimes people who are psychic, I've worked with people that are like really good psychics, and they like the part where they can sketch because they've never used that part. And sketching is kind of like connected directly to your subconscious. It's like automatic writing. And
doodling. I usually doodle.
Exactly.
Doodling.
And then when you look at your doodle, you're like, oh, wow. So if you can imagine, if we set up an intention of a target and you lined up your doodle with the target, can you imagine what your doodle would be useful? It would be like have a purpose to it, and you could gather information from it. Wow. Sure. It's like, mind blowing.
And the structure is so important for a lot of people who are sensitive because they've never had the structure. They didn't know they can control their sensitivity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Kira says he uses the vibrational frequency from names to find the location of a person or an object associated with that person. So he's using his antennas to
he uses
the vibration.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like what is it called? Kinesthetic, where you touch an object and then that also gets you some. Yeah, there are people that do that too. Yeah, for sure. That anything. The only difference to kind of free form remote viewing and what we're doing is that we're recording everything on paper, and we have a method to follow, a protocol to follow.
And the protocol gives you like measurable results too, which is important if you're in the military or anywhere else where you have to say, see,
right.
See?
Yeah, exactly. And I tell my students, like, we already know we're psychic. We don't need to prove it. So, this is just a helpful tool, and use what you can from it. Like, take things that you like, add it to what you're doing. But, during the class, just set aside everything kind of learn this, and then take and pick and whatever you want that helps you do better. And that's kind of my philosophy about it.
So here's a question. I was just remembering one time when I called it remote viewing, but I don't think it was remote viewing as much as something else. I was talking to my girlfriend on the phone. We were both babysitting, and I described exactly where she was. I'd never been there, and I could see. Now, was I seeing through her eyes, through the phone? I wasn't really remote viewing. I was more or less tapping into what she was seeing and getting impressions from her brain more than remote viewing, I would think.
Yeah, I think the term remote viewing is an issue because what you did was kind of remote viewing. It was. The only difference is that we're doing it we're following a protocol. So I guess I would call that more like freestyle remote viewing. It's really about your intention. Like if you set the intention, like I'm going to view your location, which I've done tons of times without pen and paper. I had a friend that was traveling the world, and he would, text me. He didn't even call. He would text, say, okay, where am I right now? And then I would just like text back, okay, I'm getting this, that, the other thing. So it's still kind of remote viewing, like according to the words. But just to define the differences, when we're talking about this, we're talking kind of an organized, structured method. And but it's all really the same thing. We're projecting our subconscious to the target and describing it.
But with your method, I think you can improve as you go along. Whereas when it's freestyle, it's like anything freestyle, like you did it once, like, but
yeah.
Can you repeat that experiment, please? Yeah.
This sets you up for learning lessons. That's the whole thing. Because you do your session, and then once your session's done and you turn it in, we send the feedback. So then what happens, say you're looking, somebody just set up a photo, you'll take the photo and then you put it with your paper and you start learning things about yourself. You learn about, how do I communicate with my higher self? And you start developing, and I never really said this, but you're developing a relationship with all those different parts of yourself, and you're learning how it communicates. It's kind of funny. Like, I had a student where the target was a train that was traveling on a bridge between two big, um, cliffs or mountains. And he, on his session, drew a vertical rectangle with a bunch of little squares inside and the word AOL. He named it as a building. But if you take the paper and you turn it sideways, it was a train. So your subconscious is trying to communicate, but the left brain is hijacking and saying, no, it's not a train, that's a building, So this is what we're fighting against. And if you have it on paper and you follow the structure, this is how we start, getting to know each other, and like getting to know our higher self and how it thinks, because everybody's different. Everybody, just like we all have different personalities, we also have a different relationship with our higher self.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so interesting. Can you tell us well, I know we'd love to do an experiment, but I don't think we have time, do we? Do we have a little time, or
not? Maybe we can plan it for another time in the future, where we can set it up.
But tell us a bit about how your classes run, and I know IRVA. Tell us a little bit about IRVA.
IRVA, so the International Remote Viewing Association, is a place of where we have conferences every year. So a lot of people, remote viewers, meet up once a year, and we hear a lot of talks. But the overall umbrella is for education and scientific research. And if you go to my website, we can say that later. My website, I have a bunch of peer-reviewed and published research papers where we did some experiments with remote viewing. There's another kind of remote viewing called ARV, associated remote viewing. And this is a method, so it's a little different. It's a method that you use when you want to answer a binary question, like this or that, or up and down. So a lot of people use that to look at, stock markets, sporting events. So they're making money doing that protocol. But you can also use it for personal questions. Like if you had a job offer in another state and you want to know, should I go to that job or stay here? You can remote view that. So you can do a lot of things, personal questions for yourself and doing that. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, though? I want to hear, you kind of began to tell us, but you were remote viewing in Mount Shasta, or you were remote viewing Mount Shasta.
Yeah. So the cool thing about remote viewing is you can also do esoteric targets. You can do things that we have these big, huge questions about. And my teacher, when I was learning, and this was like I was still in training, but he asked me to remote view Mount Shasta because he was working on a project with a whole team. And he just was like, Michelle, like, I'd like you to set an intention and dream about the target, and then wake up. And so I didn't know it was Mount Shasta, by the way. So he just said, I have a target. I want you to go to sleep, have a dream, and then when you wake up, do a session. So I was like, okay. So I had this weird dream where there was some kind of portal, and I wanted to go into the portal, but in my line of vision was this ginormous crystal. And I was trying to look, I was trying to look around the crystal to get into the portal, but the crystal seemed to have a consciousness, or it was a life form or something, and it wouldn't let me pass. And so when I woke up, I did my whole session on my dream and whatever, and then I handed it in, and then he told me that they were looking at a portal at Mount Shasta, which was connected to the Lemurian people. And a lot of the other remote viewers were also getting crystals. And so he was very fascinated by my dream and remote viewing of it. So it's really cool. But we look at all sorts of kind of cool things. We've looked at the Baltic Sea Anomaly. I don't know if you know about that. We've looked at Mars. We've looked at
about the Baltic Sea Anomaly, because that seems to be maybe something that we need to know about.
So the Baltic Sea Anomaly is it is something that's deep in the ocean, and there's a documentary of these guys that they're treasure hunters, and through the what's it called, those machines, the
sonographs, but no, it's like a sonograph.
Yeah, something like where they were getting a vibration from underneath, and they were getting something, and they were able to take photos of it. And I think they also got some satellite also. And it's this humongous formation, and it's very deep that, it's not easy for us to get to. I think they had to hire one of those water crafts to go down there. So it's very big, and we wanted to determine, is this natural in nature, or is it a man-made thing? And when you look at it, you can look it up online. Just put in Baltic Sea Anomaly. It looks like a spaceship. It looks like it's metallic and whatever. So I've always been so curious about this, and somebody gave me that as a target. And if you take my class, you'll probably be doing it, but I won't tell you when, so you won't know. But anyway, so most of the people that have done this session are coming up with man-made, and they always are describing UFOs or some non-human life forms connected with it. When I did it, I'm sure it was an AOL, I was making a whole story up, but I was getting, again, crystal, but there was a connection to Atlantis, where there were people that were joined up by crystals, and that crystal was life. And, not fire. It was like crystals were life. They were living off crystal energy. And so that was what my session said. And then other people are getting, some of these other things too. But it's really cool. It's like the sky's the limit of what you can remote view. Another personal thing is what foods should you stay away from? That's another one. And then the other esoteric ones are just a lot of fun. I worked on a team where we were looking at the Olympics. And that was a year before. So it was, I believe, 2019. And so, again, this is a perfect story about how we draw conclusions and how we have to kind of cope with that being human, but we have to cope with it. So I did my session, and I was getting a couple different things going on. One thing that was kind of going on was I was getting some kind of debris everywhere. And I wasn't sure if it was something explosive or weather related or something. And again, I'm reminding you that I had no idea what the target was. I don't even know who hired us to do the session. It was completely, I was completely blind to everything. So I was getting debris and piles of, stuff everywhere. It was just looking chaotic. And then my session kind of transitioned into an inside setting, and I was perceiving some kind of I think I even was kind of looking at a desktop and computers, and I was getting something like a computer virus and something like that. And anyway, I turned in the session, and so they gave us feedback, but we didn't have feedback because it was a year before. So they told us what we were viewing, but until the event happens, we don't really get our feedback, until that happens. So, so the pandemic hits, right? And so the Olympics were supposed to happen in 2020 at Fukushima. And by the way, I did say land and water interface. So this was happening on a land, which was in Japan. And then in 2021, it just dawned on me, and I started thinking about that session I did. And it occurred to me, oh my gosh, this is where I drew a conclusion. My mind was looking at the patterns. And of course, what did I know at the time? Computer viruses. No, it was not a computer virus. It was a virus. That was what, and the question they said, what are the top things that will, prevent the Olympics, or the top threats for the Olympics? And so that was what was the top threat of the Olympics. But that's where we get into trouble when we draw conclusions.
That's really so. We don't have much more time, but would you tell us about your website and where people can, and your schedule of upcoming classes where people can actually interact and learn how to remote view and get a hold of themselves? And
so it's called butterflyeffectcenter.com. So it's spelled butterfly, BUTTERFLY, effect, EFFECT, and then center, CENTER.com. And I have classes coming up at the end of the month. I teach a healing remote viewing protocol called MedApps. And so we learn how to identify people and identify physical illnesses and things like that. And that will be on October 29th and November 5th. And then right after that starts again my 6-week course called Transdimensional Remote Viewing. And then after that, I spoke about the ARV one, the Associated Remote Viewing. That will happen right after that. So they're all listed on my website under remote viewing. And I would love you guys to sign up and join the class so I have people to teach.
It's awesome. And people can come to you for private sessions as well, right? And for all sorts of things. And you've had lots of people come for lost things, I imagine.
Exactly. We do. So that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm trying to put a team together, because I get calls all the time where people are willing to pay us. I mean, not a lot of money, but mama needs a new pair of shoes money. And this way we can actually get, paid to do it. So, a lot of people will come. I lost my wedding ring or a bracelet, or one time we had somebody for papers. They lost certain papers and we helped them find them. Keys, that's a big one. Losing keys.
That makes sense.
Super. It's super to have you here, and I'm so glad. And you run that media company, and you have some guests for us, and we will probably tap you up for the people that you represent as well. So that would be wonderful. And we'll talk about that later between us. But Teresa, do you have the winner for us from this week? Oh, I wanted to ask you quickly. Okay, what's your favorite song, Michelle?
My favorite song would be, I'm going to go with Michelle, My Belle by the Beatles. I mean, I have a billion, but I'm going to say that one because
it makes sense, Michelle.
Makes sense. Yeah.
How cool.
I'm missing Bex today. Bex would have be all right over this. And do you have a favorite crystal that you work with? that you enjoy?
Actually, I use moldavite, and it's really good for remote viewing because it's a kind of time traveler crystal. So it helps us kind of move through time. And sometimes we're doing the past, sometimes we're doing the future. So I like moldavite.
Yeah.
That's a powerful crystal for sure. And have you had any encounters with UFOs or extra dimensional intelligence?
I did have not really. I mean, a couple things. One is that I've worked with people that felt like they were abducted, um, and the other thing is during one of my sessions, I had a kind of weird experience where I felt this kind of baritone voice kind of hijacking my session. And it turned out that we were remote viewing a UFO. And so, yeah, it wasn't scary at all. It was just like, whoa, okay, like that. So,
wow, how fun!
Cool. Well, I'd love to have you on again, and maybe we'll have a little experiment in that, and maybe I'll sign up for your class in January if I'm.
That would be so great. Yeah, I would love it. I would love your listeners to take the class also. It would be so much fun.
Yeah, the medical apps one, I wish I could, but I'll be away. So, yeah, we're so fluid here that our hosts pop in and out, no problem. Thank you, Teresa, for coming back. Teresa, do you have the name of the winner from last week? Did you find one?
I did. I went between 1 and 2. Rhonda, pick which one, 1 or 2?
2.
Okay, Kathy Sheiblin Donnelly.
Okay.
You're the winner. Woohoo!
You're the winner.
What did she win?
We have done this meditation spa, and it's Teresa takes us on a guided meditation through Egypt, and then we go through. Bex gives some downloaded messages to whoever's doing it, and the other person gets some remote healing from myself. They just follow this guided meditation, and they kind of it's a soul spa, we call it.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
They use their imagination and they get right into it, but our energy is all encoded, so we have a pre-recorded one for them to join in.
Oh wow, yeah. That's neat! Congratulations.
Fun times. So we have to get together soon and get our other one done before I go for a while. Anyways, yes. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. It was so much fun, and it was such a pleasure to meet you virtually.
Virtually. We'll stick around. We'll be right back. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Namaste.